Welcome to the third game of the World Championship match between Nepa and Ding. Since today was a boring draw, I decided that instead of looking at their game, we're gonna have a lesson dedicated to the Queen's Gambit Carlsbad variation. And to show you what's going on there, I decided to look at the game between Nepa and Ding from today. By the way, in the previous video I mentioned that I visited the match, round 2 of the match, and here you can see a photo. The game is in progress and nobody there. Actually, explaining games started with 1d4. It's much easier for me and I understand some things there since I am a 1d4 player. It's interesting that usually people play this setup knight f6 e6, yes, and then depending on white's move they switch for d5. I mean, for example, knight f3 g3 and then black goes d5. And after knight c3, normally black played bishop b4, but just it's a modern trend that d5 is quite popular. So what is the point? Actually, there is no, like, I don't see what is a point, let's say, not to start with d5, c4, e6, knight c3, and then knight f6. So this is just like move order for, like, that's, it's possible to go this way or other way, like, I don't see a real difference. And after d5, yeah, cd5 is one of the main lines. There is also an interesting alternative, bishop d5. This is what I play time to time. I also play cd5, so cd5 is the main move, ed5, bishop g5, c6, e3, and normally black played bishop e7 or knight d7, but nowadays h6 is becoming quite popular. So bishop h4, bishop e7, bishop d3, castling Queen c2. The point of h6 is to remove the pawn from possible attack and so kind of winning a tempo. And also the point is something like knight f3, and black's idea is to go for rook e8 and then knight e4 jump, trading the dark squared bishops. So queen c2, rook e8, and for example, if white goes for knight f3 after knight e4, and then either bishop takes e7, queen e7, and black is more or less okay. Or, for example, bishop e4, then bishop takes h4, bishop h7, king h8, and unfortunately for white, rook e3 is an annoying threat, so white has no time to, like, white would like to castle, but then g6, trapping the bishop. But if white plays bishop d3, then rook takes e3, using the pin. So that's why, like, it's even what I tried myself is to play knight e2 here, or in one game, if I'm not mistaken, it was something more or less similar. I played bishop g3, but probably my queen was still on d1. Bishop g3 is an interesting idea, removing the bishop from possible trades. So knight e4, then we just grab a pawn on e4. And after rook e8, knight e2, knight d7. Usually black plays a5 followed by knight a6 and then kind of threatening knight b4, and later knight moves to c7. This is the point. Knight d7 I don't really know. I'm not sure, for example, if that's good. Similarly as a5 at least. So castles a5, a3, knight h5, still trading the dark squared bishop, bishop e7, queen e7, and yeah, so I mentioned Carlsbad pawn structure. It's a pawn structure that arises after cd5, ed5, yes, and now we have this f2, e3, d4 versus b7, c6, d5. This pawn structure called as Carlsbad pawn structure, and there are a few possible plans for white. One of them is, the most common one is to go for b4, b5, minority attack, or also known as a triangle attack. So we attack the c6 pawn, Okay, here it's not really a basement of d5 pawn, its basement is b7, but we cannot reach the b7 pawn, so we attack at least the c6 pawn. This is one of the most common plan. Another one with knight on f3 is to go for knight e5, then f4, and some play either in the center or on the king side. And there is one more plan, something like e4, and sometimes we go for d4 directly, sometimes we support it with f3 first, and then we go for e4. And I don't understand why Nepo didn't go for, let's say, rook b1 here, with idea of b4. Since the white king is quite safe on the king side, I mean, I don't see any ideas for black to play on the king side. At least it will be slow. So rook b1 seems to be like a normal move. Then thinking maybe to go for b4, maybe not to go. After rook a e1, which is still okay, knight f8, I also don't understand knight c1 move. Like, what is the point of this move? Like, probably what he did on the next move is f3, and this is the point of knight c1. Maybe, for example, something like knight a4, then maybe moving the knight to c5, maybe to b6, and still, for me, it feels like the most natural plan here could be going for b4, then b5, or maybe knight a4, knight c5, so something like this on the queen side. While what happened in the game, knight c1, knight f6, f3, knight e6, knight e2 back. And now this is a typical story. This is also something that would be good for you to know, especially if you play either d4 as white or you play queen's gambit as black. This is a typical situation. Once white has moved the pawn from f2 to f3, black could go for c5, since now the e3 pawn is weakened and it's not that well protected, so black can go for c5. While doing that earlier is possible, but not that good. Let's say at this moment knight f6, and let's just make any move for white, like knight e2, then c5, dc5, queen c5, and this is still something that what possible to do, but it's not that good for black. Since now e3 is protected, and it's a typical story, a play against the isolated pawn, so white's position is better. However, black still can hold. While after c5, let's say dc5, probably queen c5, not knight takes c5, since after knight c5, knight d4, the d4 square is the most important square in such a pawn structure, when black has an isolated queen's pawn. So that's why I guess queen c5 should be better, also attacking the e3 pawn while controlling the d4 square. And next move black can go for d4. So in the game it was bishop b5, rook d8, dc5, queen c5, queen d2, bishop d7, and like honestly saying, there is not much to mention, not much to say here, since after bishop d7, knight d7, it's not that typical position with isolated queen's pawn where white has stable advantage and black has no counterplay. And then they just found each other and the game ended in a draw. Few interesting things from this game. First of all, 1 d4. Nepo is a 1 e4 player, and time to time he plays 1 c4. As far as I remember, he doesn't play 1 d4. Like even if he plays that, it's a rare case. And that's something good from him, since for example, in the match against Carlsbad, he tried like 4 games in a row with white. He tried 1 e4, like 1 e4, 1 e4, 1 e4, even getting just similar position all the time and not really playing chess. So in this match, he showed that he can play one e4, he can play one d4, and that's something interesting at least, yeah. Also, you see, Din Liren follows modern trends, so that's also good from him. But what I don't understand from this game is, let's say, knight c1 move, even rook e1. I'm also not sure about that one. Like rook e1 is possible, but then going for knight c1 and going for f3, it didn't give white anything. Yeah, so like at least try to play on the queen side, maybe rook b1, rook c1, knight a4 or b4. So focusing on the queen side. Yeah, I think another thing to mention, this draw is a really good achievement for Ding. So he didn't break, at least for now. So like I think the rest day was important for him to calm down. But here there is a tricky possibility. In the next game, he gonna play white, and maybe he will try to go forward. And that could be a mistake. We will see, of course, but something similar to the second game could happen. For Ding, I would still recommend just to hold, to play solid, not losing a single game and waiting for the second part of this match.